So, Dror, what's been happening? We haven't done one of these for a week or two. That's a long time in most other industries. What do you want to talk about today?
I noticed that A16Z, there's an article that ended up buying a whole cluster of NVIDIA GPUs, and they rent it to their portfolio companies because startups these days can't get access to GPUs. It's basically there's still a bottleneck there. So think about it like if you remember 10 years ago when A16Z came up with their model of supporting the entrepreneur service. A lot of it was actually renting space. If you're a small startup and you need a desk or two desks or whatever. Some of it was HR, so recruiting. It's a big pain for startups. So now it's level up to actually renting them GPUs. So maybe it's the next thing we need to do in Empress. Yash, do you feel we should buy a GPU rack and start renting it out?
Well, we do talk about how we add value, but I guess you need some pretty deep pockets to be able to start buying enough to be useful. Well, it is interesting as well because if you think about how the big players, so whether it be Amazon or Google, are funding companies and then getting them to work on their platforms, it's kind of a similar thing where they're investing, but they're kind of getting the money back through using their infrastructure. So yeah, I don't know if it's a good long term thing.
They copy from the AWS. You know how AWS invites you to all sorts of events and help you, but basically it's geared towards start building on our platform. Once you start building on a platform, it's very hard to move out.
Look, one of the things I think is down your alley that I wanted to get your take on was about the former head of AI at Tesla, Andre Karpathy, I think is his name. I can never pronounce names very well, but he's gone on and started a new venture, Eureka Labs, in the education space, looking to be a platform, around helping that personalized education. I know that's a big part of what you've done in the past. But yeah, I think the initial product is about having a undergraduate course that sort of A-level course and gives, students, teachers students to build their own AI assistants. I think it's good. I think it's interesting. What do what's your sort of take on that? I think, some of this as well as we're seeing, I think that personalized education coming out of just within universities or whatever that I think this is going to become, it is and will become even more so a way of have scalable education, personalized, learning. You know more about this. This is what your PhD was around that space. So what's your sort of take on what you're seeing with companies like this and people, like who were previously in heads of AI like this, going in?
The one successful story was Coursera, where a group of Stanford, celebrity professors, if you want, got a ton of money from venture capitalists and started up Coursera. And it was the MOOC revolution of exactly 11 years ago. And that didn't work out the way everybody expected. Shareholders did well, investors did well, but in terms of the impact on the actual higher education, it didn't have a massive impact. They pivoted very quickly from we're going to help universities and students at universities to we're going to help corporations and independent students. And the reason is that education is just, can't be changed. It's too hard to change education. You're talking to a guy who's for 15 years walked around and says his mission is to, revolutionize education, disrupt education, change education, improve education. It's too difficult. So I am curious what he's trying to do. I need to learn more. If the goal is to become a product that's used in mainstream higher education, then that's really hard. I will applaud if he managed to. I suspect more likely it would start at something that aimed at that market, but will pivot into something that's more, faster to work with, like corporate learning, professional development, and so forth. So yeah, that's kind of my take, and I think I'm happy to test that in a year or two.
Do you not think that education itself will be different and universities will be based totally on this, or do you think that in person, learning from each other, or how you can have this hybrid? I feel like the future is a hybrid approach where you might have these personalized agents, and the value of like a university or is that community learning together, or that sort of cohort that you can work together with, and you take away from that is the big thing from what I think is potentially going to be there. I just go, is there not a new educational institution through all this technology, like a new, and it's not even the existing ones, maybe the existing ones, because this is quite threatening to the way we teach and the way, what the role is. Maybe there's a first, AI first university or AI first, I really love Singularity University, the way they do things. In that sense, it's a different mode of learning.
It's a great idea, but it's not a university, so it doesn't give you a degree. So universities, it's a confidence drink. The trick. The whole idea is that you go there to get a piece of paper that you went there, and the government has a monopoly about who they give the that piece of paper to, the accreditation to give you pieces of paper. So the truth of the matter is that universities and higher education specifically, and education is not really a true market. It's not a free market that you imagine when you think about products sold to individual buyers for their own interests. This is governments, unions, accreditation processes. It's highly regulated. So sure, universities may adopt it, but they can't change what universities do, which is to give accreditation based on certain criteria. So that's the benefit of challenge of education in the space as a whole. Now, is there an opportunity to sell AI chats to universities? Yes, of course there is. I'm only forecasting, giving an expectation. My bet is that it will evolve quickly from trying to sell to universities, which is slow, burdensome, and painful, to try to sell to corporations, which move fast, have a real need, and can actually decide. So I've seen that path move like a lot of times, and there's a reason for it, because education is really difficult to change. Now, that doesn't mean it's impossible. Of course, it's possible. It's just the wonder is like, is this, if you invest in a technology company, where do you want your money to what do you want your money to do? Do you want them to go for slow sales cycle that can take 2 years? You meet a university professors and will tell you, this is amazing, we love it, and we will consider using it next year, second term.
Is it not that things are moving so quickly that even unless you're really in the research spaces around this technology, isn't it that that's moving too slowly, that it's just, is it going to be relevant in a lot of areas if you're not adopting this? I mean, I'll give you. I mean, I'm guest lecturing next week at Uni in New South, just talking about AI, like about how we're practically seeing things and the implications of AI from a more practical point of view. What we're seeing, and so I feel like they need to move. It needs to move quicker, and these kinds of tools will help that to happen. Yeah, I don't know. I agree with you that you're right. The money is in the corporate learning opposed to the like it'll be harder, and it's also disruptive in that to go. How do you sort of deal with the current? Well, there's this is in every industry. This is disrupting teachers, lecturers, tutoring. If we'd go into other workplaces, and there was a thing I wanted to sort of talk about as well, was really there was a in the mainstream media here, a bit of scaremongering around how Australia is falling behind in AI, and Australia's not adopting things because people are worried about jobs being lost and so forth. And so it does lead into why there'll be a slower adoption because of this threatening technology. But to me, the cat's out of the bag, and people have to really take this on. So look, did you see the other thing that I wanted to sort of touch on as well was really around how companies have been using YouTube? Have you sort of seen the things that's out there around that? So there was an article or several articles about this, just around the fact that a lot of companies, including some of our own, Anthropic, Nvidia, Apple, Salesforce, all of these guys have been using YouTube to train their articles, their models. And so the question is, once again, how do you feel about that content and IP, and whether it be education, once again, Khan Academy and these kinds of places, their IP being used, or news outlets, and how do you sort of feel that if people aren't really aware that their content is being used to train? Even now, we're probably being used to train right now, even these conversations, right? So Shouldn't we get paid some money for that if that's what's happening and people are making money out of it?
It's an uncharted territory, and it's one of those the cows are out, right, or whatever the phrase is. The Look, it's obviously clear that OpenAI, etc., have been training on website for helping developers. How does OpenAI know how to solve my software problems? Trained on Stack Overflow. Now, once it's trained, it's extremely difficult to prove it. I mean, there are ways. There are ways. It's not that difficult. I'll take it back. It's possible to prove it, but the smarter the model, the more evolved the model it is, and the more they wrap the model around with certain, layers of not just pure inference, put another way. There's a bit of direction there, what they call steering. The harder will be to prove that. And also, once it's done, you don't need to do it again. So once a model has been trained on YouTube, it's been done, and now your competitor have an advantage on you. And I expect, and we data talk about it, like learning from YouTube. I expect more of this would happen, and we'll have essentially it's a legal battle. They have to. So what is the article said? What is YouTube? What is YouTube? What's Google position on that?
Well, so I think that's the interesting thing. Google could block it and could stop people or make that they're okay with it. I guess it makes YouTube more valuable as well. I guess what they're doing, they could have a real advantage by not doing that though. And so I think, look, I think the big thing for me out of this is that we need to have. There's probably a product or there's a way that people should be able to be compensated for content. I don't know how you could actually, how does that work? How can you sort of compensate in a way where if your data is used more, for things a bit like, it's pretty hard because it's trained, and then it's like, how do you prove what the volume of usage is of your own ideas that the model is then spitting out to millions of people's? I think it's interesting that just the fact that this is a problem to be solved. And the question is whether Google could turn that off or want to turn that off, or why they wouldn't. Why wouldn't they turn it off? Because they would have a big advantage, or why would they leave it that way? What's your sort of thoughts on that?
I don't know. I don't know if they can take it off. Like if once I get that video once, I don't need to go. It's not like I'm crawling it and I just download it once. So you've got that video in my data set.
But what if your terms of service are you can't do that, or you?
If the terms of service, sure. So that's what I'm saying. It's a legal arena. So in the legal arena now, it's whose job is to sue who? Who wants to sue who? So I watched the video. I downloaded it. Effectively, I downloaded it once I watched it. Now I use it for training my model. Which law exactly says I can't? It's I don't think the law explains that it's not like referencing websites with robot.txt that they used to put on websites to prevent you from referencing that. That's different.
But I think that will be the thing. They'll do something. We'll have something like that if it isn't already there.
Yeah, it is. There is something there, and there's a program that OpenAI put out to allow you to opt out of them kind of crawling. It's against the concept of crawling. So instead of crawling, they won't train on your content. I'd like to see a case goes to court and see what's the position of the legal system on that. Like, again, it's also if I'm producing something that has if I'm listening to lots of music of Britney Spears or whatever, and then I produce something, I learned from listening to everything I listened to. So the question is not what I learned, it's what I produced. So if I produce something that is distinctly similar to some copyrighted material, then that's a copyright infringement. So it's not about the learning side, it's the production side that's regulated. We don't have anything that says, hey, you're not allowed to learn, you're not to listen. It's like we're saying to you, you're not allowed to read a book, or you're not allowed to listen to a music video or something like that. This is like the law is not clear about that part.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about you listening to Britney Spears. That's what's making me. But you're right. That I think it's also like we learn this way. We learn from other, whether it be videos or articles or books, and then we have our own take on that, and that adds to it. So I think the thing is we can do that so much more easily with AI, and Yeah, I think IP is a really. I think this is going to be a really. There needs to be a solution in this space. I think this is why I like all these discussions we're having. Is it throws up problems, and each problem has a solution. And I guess that's a good segue into speaking of which is, one of the problems is deep fakes, and there's companies out there trying to solve that. And so there's a interesting TechCrunch article about a firm called Pindrop. Just secured $100 million loan, and it's interesting to see they're having a loan rather than raising equity in that sense. But I see this as a massive area, and companies like this, I think there will be, like we have antivirus, we're going to have this sort of anti-deepfake tools that'll be embedded into whatever we're watching or reading. And when I saw the Trump things on YouTube, I actually went, that's a fake. My first reaction was, that's a fake. It kept coming up, and I looked closely, and it was like BBC, and I went, oh, hold on. But I really felt like just the visuals felt so hyped and unreal that it was deep fake. So my go-to is that it's fake, and then you have to prove it's real. I think I'm sure there's lots of people that think real first and then fake, but I think we almost have to. I start with everything being fake, and then going the other way. I think it's interesting seeing that companies like Pindrop doing that. But what's your talk about this? But I do think this AI powered security solutions is a really interesting area, and I think particularly around identity, deep fakes, and demand for that detection is going to be there.
What do we know about their product? Is the product something that an enterprise adopts? Is it a consumer, or is it still technology?
No, I think they've got quite a lot of customers that are using it. It was founded by an ex-Googler, I think. I think the guy's name's Vijay Balasubramaniam. I'm very bad at pronouncing names, no matter whether I should be able to pronounce that better. Yeah, I think they're a sort of 250 person organization. But yeah, I think their focus is on that authentication and deep fake. So I think it's interesting because it's got these characteristics that it looks at. To be able to kind of analyze voice, and the higher the accuracy, we're going to have this increase of better deep fakes and better detection. And so I think I'd love to see some investments here in Australia, people doing things in this space as well, because I feel like this is a sort of open-ended problem, and that's a great place to invest in as well. When you're going to have to keep moving up the constant thing. And I think this is where we're going. This is where we are. I think it's just going to get even bigger, and how you integrate that into everything that you read and you look at. So yeah,
I think it will. I think this type of technology will bake itself eventually into the operating systems that we use. And it's interesting. So this particular product is selling to enterprises that actually needs to protect two-factor authentication, which is, that's you being confused about Trump is not a market, but a bank needs to secure their systems from deepfake authentication attacks is definitely a market. However, I do think you being confused by the Trump assassination footage is actually a social problem, and I expect that there will be. I think I kind of hope and expect that there will be some embedding of this type of technology into the systems we use. So that would be the browsers, the operating systems, and so forth. So that basically, essentially, every feed of video image will have some sort of ability to track prominence. Now, that doesn't mean it's... Anyway, so we can talk about how this can become, but I think it will become more and more common that people will not believe media they see online. And then that's a problem for humanity, but it's also a business problem for certain actors that can combat that. And there's research that there's technology product that can actually solve for that. So I'm looking at that space. I've been looking at that space for a while, and I'm looking. I love to see startups working on that.
Yeah, and I like their approach just around how they're looking at all these different characteristics of voice and looking at how AI models training voice and generating it, and then doing the reverse of that to be able to identify something that isn't real. And so, yeah, I think this is what I also see. Every problem has a solution, and every time we have using this technology because we're talking about using voice for customer support and doing it for, whatever that might be, really practical uses of that. People then start to use that for things that you don't want, whether it be scamming people or, deep fakes and so forth. So I think then these products are really great. Like I say, I think we as an investor, our lens needs to be around all these, understanding these issues, and then understanding that there's products potentially to be developed. And I just think it's really interesting. I think we should maybe keep a track more on what they're doing and some of the other people in that space. But if there are any companies out there in Australia, I'd love to talk and see what's happening here locally as well.
I'm just looking at Claude 3.5 artifacts. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
What is it? What is it? What are these things?
It generates these. It's the way that it does it. It generates either code artifacts, or when you're using it in one window, it creates these little artifacts, and they might be either little products, little bits of code, or I'm going to say snippets. Artifacts is the but that's what I'm saying. It creates them in some instances. I don't know where what that is, but I think it's very useful in what I've used when it does do it.
So what I'm reading, I'm not a user of Claude. I'm a big user of ChatGPT at this stage. What I really like about it is that it gives you a sense of what things look like when you design the LLM first. Do you know this phrase like, mobile first? Remember how there was all this wave of products that were web products, and then mobile came, and there's this 2 years of confusion about what is a mobile versus a website. Is a mobile just a small website? Is an app just a small website? And it's the same thing. It's like, what was the first websites is the first version of an online app, a browser-based app. It's the same like a desktop-based app, but in the browser. And now it's like there's this phrase I used to say, the medium is the message. The new medium is the interesting message here. The fact that it's a mobile app makes that very interesting. It's not a web app, and you need to think mobile first. And that was, the design trend of the last 10 years. It's all about mobile first and so forth. So what's AI first? And we've seen, and this is a really question, because we look at this interface and they're chatbots. So you ask for some code, and it gives you some code, or you ask for some text, it gives you some text. But I think this is the beginning of something interesting of how do you design products where they're AI native. And I think that's the first time I've seen that. So that's pretty cool.
No, and what's funny is I couldn't describe it very well, but I've been using it, right? And I don't know what it is, so I've kind of just been articulating that a bit more, and looking at what they're saying. But yeah, so I think the examples of what artifacts are, and I did have so it's either little documents or code snippets or little HTML or diagrams. But I think the key point as to what you're saying is that the workflow and how you use it can be separate to your chat, and you're iterating on that artifact, and you can have multiple of these. And so if we're thinking about, and I do this a lot now, how I'm thinking about using an AI, you're iterating on all these ideas, but you have a base sort of discussion, and you can kind of move to the side and have these interesting conversations generating something useful. And I think you're right. This is an evolution of how we will use the products. This iterative design, iterative writing, iterative everything. I find this is how I'm using a lot of these products. And this is one of our investments as well. We should be. I've been using it a fair bit, but I find it just very powerful. Like just really, really powerful to come up.
My 2 cents here is that when you are. I think it gives you a glimpse into the future of many, many applications where there is an artifact. In many applications, it's a file, right? So in a word processing, you've got a file. Or when you edit video, you've got the session, the video you're editing. And then what do we do with graphical user interface? We put all the controls around the artifact, right? So if you're in Photoshop or Figma, or you're coding something, or you're writing something, you've got the thing you're doing, and then you've got all the buttons around it. And then we talk about how, AI, in fact, this new large language model is a different types of interface to the computer, right? So if your interface is a mouse or touch screens, then you need buttons. But if your interface is a conversations, then it's very clear that it's very soon, and here it is arriving, we're seeing that the artifact is still the thing I'm producing is there, and now I can talk about it, right? So that's the notion of co-pilot. The notion of a co-designer to your artifact. But it's architecturally, it's much different than just a chatbot. It needs much more context about what you're doing. So if the chatbot is currently kind of, they implemented it there, that's very nice. The question is when is it going to come into the operating system? Meaning that like every artifact I'm working on in my operating system, there will be an AI that's basically monitoring its state and know what it's doing and able to help me in there. Do you know what I'm saying? It's not just about, it needs to monitor what you're doing constantly.
Well, so I think that's where Apple will go, right? Apple will try and put, and Microsoft as well. But I think the Apple intelligence side, I'm interested to see what's going to come out in September with Apple's implementation of their intelligence, and also the fact that I don't know that it felt like there was this link to OpenAI with Apple, just kind of what they can't do doing that. But I think it could be with I'd be really happy if it was companies like Anthropic that they worked with as well to interact this similar way. So look, I think it's interesting. I think there was something funny I did want to share, and maybe we can bring that up. There's a podcast, and I think we have it just around a guy started a podcast working with different models. So he has Claude, he has like Llama, and he has like ChatGPT, and he runs his podcast talking to each one of those. So they're interacting. Maybe that's a future video as well. Like we kind of have these discussions, having your AI in. Maybe we need to have one in here as well, right? Joining us, probably be more interesting than us.
Yeah, they tend to be lame and boring these days because they're afraid of lawsuits.
But imagine if you could build that up to being actually quite interesting. I think it will be. I've had some people approach me talking about having AI generated magazines, and the AI, like it generates. It's is there a market for this? That just embracing it rather than pretending you're writing. People are using some of this. Is actually just having AI decide what's important and write it and see what comes out. And would people use that? I'm not sure about some of those things. But as it improves, it might be the way to go. Look, I just feel like everything is evolving quickly. I think we should probably end with a demo. There's a new demo of Sora. I don't know if you've seen that as well. It's pretty it's all just mind blowing. What is going to be reality? What is not? And just how this is going to be the creativity side of what we're doing. How this can be used.
I think it's cool. I think the competition between man and machine is hitting up. And there will be, the question is what the audience would love. Is the audience going to react when a video? So when computer generated video of movies came out, there was this debate whether the audience would love something that's generated by a computer, and the answer is absolutely. Kids loved the hell out of it because it was a good story. And guess what? Computer-generated videos were not cheaper. Actually, they were more expensive than film productions. So what we don't know at this stage is we don't know the consumer interest. So I'm seeing a music video that looks pretty cool, and okay, I don't know how much was it a cent to create. How long did it really take? It's just leveling up of the capabilities. Especially, I think of it as a special type of special effects that people, creatives will add to their videos and their art. And at this stage, and we don't know the consumer sentiment. So if you've got this new label and they're just all it does is pushing AI based audio and music, maybe it will be successful, maybe not. Let's see it win in the actual market.
I talked with one of the founders last week, or a week before, Kartini, who's the founder of a product, KOOP Music, and it's an AI music tool that allows artists to take their own creations, control their data, and use it to create their own model. So you have a fine-tuned model that allows people to do that. And she it was really interesting just in terms of what she showed me in terms of taking various bits of music and then creating other derivative products off that and being able to be compensated. And I really liked how this worked. I think this could be a really interesting way. I think the challenge is around how do you do this in a way that people that's commercially there. And so they did some things with the Sydney Opera House demoing how this could work. Look, I think this is once again interesting. We had a problem where people aren't being compensated. Our discussion today was a little bit about how people's IP is not. We're training on other people's data. Now we have a solution for people to be able to use their own content, use their own creativity. There just needs to be a model where that can be, people can be compensated for that. And so I think this is interesting. I'm still not sure how the commercial viability of something like that is, but I think it's interesting to see that we have, things, companies like that here in Australia.
Yeah, well, it's an experimental phase, right?
Yeah, I think they're trying to work out the right model. But I think this is the point. Every time we have an issue, there are products that are going to be developed like this that will solve those problems. And I think that's what's really sort of interesting. Today's been, for me, a good discussion of, some of the challenges we're facing through the use of AI, and equally looking at, a couple of companies that are solving those problems. I think for us, that's where the opportunities are as well, each one of these. And so, once again, I think this is just an interesting, space that we continue to see. Next week here in Australia, we have
Here in Canberra.
In Canberra, we've got a Dazed and Diffused, which is exciting. First one actually where I live, so that will be good. We seem to have a pretty good turnout. That'll be kind of sold out. I think we're 130, 140 people, and we, a couple of great companies coming along and showing how they're using generative AI in the real world. And I think I think you've talked many times before about these toy apps that are there that people are experimenting, but you're not really using them. What we're able to see here through some of our events is companies that are really using this to generate value, companies using that to solve problems. And so I think it's exciting, and I'm looking forward to seeing lots of people here. And that's another week in AI, I think. Thanks so much. See you later, Joel.
See ya. Bye-bye.